To today's pipeline safety hearing, where we will be examining ways to increase the safe and efficient movement of American energy. This is our first subcommittee hearing, and it's great to be with my colleague, Senator Peters. We've worked constructively on so many projects, and I think this is such an important one. So I'm especially appreciative of our witnesses today, so that you can help educate us on this important topic. Nearly 3.3 million miles of pipelines traverse our country, bringing essential resources to communities to ensure Americans receive basic needs like heat and electricity, and to drive economic activity and create the jobs we all care about. While this infrastructure is vital to the success of the American people, our economy, and our national security, there are some inherent risks tied to such a vast ecosystem of pipeline networks. At the end of last year in Whiting, Indiana, a pipeline leak within the BP tank field occurred, generating concerns from many in the community. While the repercussions were limited, largely thanks to the quick work of emergency responders and talented technicians, not every leak has similarly fortunate outcomes. Pipelines are the safest and the most efficient way to transport materials, and the operators are obviously incentivized to keep the resources within the pipes. That being said, these instances should serve as a stark reminder that we must remain vigilant in our efforts to uphold the highest level of safety standards for our nation's pipeline network and secure the American people's trust in the operation of this critical infrastructure. Our subcommittee plays a vital role in this work, which is why we are here today examining the need to secure the safety and resiliency of our pipeline infrastructure. I'm hopeful this hearing will shine a light on areas Congress should focus on as we look to reauthorize and hopefully improve upon existing pipeline safety laws. Whether that is an examination of outstanding rulemakings, prohibitive processes, and red tape for preventing advancements in industry, or inefficient tools for law enforcement to hold malicious actors accountable when they seek to harm our nation. I'm also hopeful that we can use this hearing to learn how emerging technologies can play a role in mitigating and preventing risks to pipeline infrastructure. For example, how might artificial intelligence be used to best detect areas of pipeline infrastructure that should be inspected after severe weather or shifts in environmental conditions like landslides or earthquakes, or where extensive strain or shifts in pressure have occurred? We don't know what incident may knock on our door next, but I believe investing in our country's ability to research and develop the next innovative application of technology or new technologies themselves will arm us with the tools to keep our pipelines and infrastructure safe. And we should be fostering an environment that allows industry to explore different means to keep pipelines safe. Indiana has been at the forefront of adopting innovative monitoring technologies and fostering partnerships between relevant parties to enhance safety and preparedness. But we need to ensure our country across the board can look forward and innovate new solutions to increase safety too. So thank you again to our witnesses for your expertise and willingness to contribute to this dialogue. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Peters.
Well, thank you, Chairman Young, and certainly appreciate the opportunity to work with you again on other issues, and I look forward to working on this one because it's particularly important, and that's why I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here today. And I can say for sure that this is an issue that hits home very directly for my state. In Michigan, we understand all too well the lasting damage an oil spill can cause. In 2010, a pipeline ruptured in Marshall, releasing over 1 million gallons of oil into the Kalamazoo River. This was the largest inland oil spill in the United States history, and it took years, as well as over $1 billion to clean up. As many of you know, Michigan is also home to Enbridge Line 5, a 70-year-old oil and gas pipeline that crosses through the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes is a source of drinking water for over 40 million people, and that line underneath the Straits of Mackinac is particularly concerning. In fact, a pipeline failure there would be nothing short of catastrophic. The University of Michigan experts have actually identified the Straits of Mackinac as the single worst place for an oil spill in the entire Great Lakes basin. And unfortunately, we've had some very close calls in the past. In 2014, Enbridge found gaps in the protective coating on a segment of the pipeline underneath the straits. In 2018, the pipeline was badly damaged by a boat anchor that was dragged along the lake bottom, resulting in 3 gouges to the pipeline. And in 2020, Enbridge discovered that a Line 5 anchor support had been mangled and that the pipeline had physically shifted, and that part of its protective coating had been completely removed, exposing bare metal. In the midst of these incidents, in 2017, the then Commandant of the Coast Guard told me flat out at a hearing when I asked him the question, he told me flat out that the agency was not prepared for an oil spill in the Great Lakes and that more research was needed to improve our response. That's when I led efforts to establish the Great Lakes Center of Expertise. The Center of Expertise will conduct research and develop responses to ensure that we're prepared to quickly and effectively address an oil spill in the Great Lakes. But rather than having to utilize the center's knowledge during a worst-case scenario, I'd certainly rather have a situation where we never have to deal with a spill in the first place and never have to respond to a Line 5 incident or another case like we saw in the Kalamazoo River. Simply put, we need standards. We need standards in place to ensure that these sorts of events never happen. And while pipelines are widely adopted mode of transporting hazardous materials, there are still safety concerns associated with their use. Over the past 20 years, the pipeline incidents have caused 257 deaths, over 1,000 injuries, and over $11 billion in damages. That's to say, we still have a heck of a lot of work to do when it comes to safety, because I don't think you'll find too many folks in Michigan that hear those numbers that in any way think we're at mission accomplished. They certainly want to make sure that their families and communities will be safe in the future. And that's why I hope we will all keep on top of mind during this hearing and throughout the pipeline safety reauthorization process that safety is always paramount. And as such, there can be no backsliding on safety in any reauthorization bill that we put forward. I look forward to working with Chairman Young as I have over the last few years. I look forward to working with our witnesses that are here today, FSMA, our state agencies, and other stakeholders to make sure that this pipeline safety reauthorization effort is better, and it better protects Michigan, our Great Lakes, as well as the nation as a whole. And I'm certainly very optimistic we can do that. I yield back.
Well, thank you again, Senator Peters, for your leadership on this issue. I'm going to go ahead and introduce briefly each of our witnesses and then ask you to make your opening statements. They are, in order, Mr. Robin Roerick, Vice President of Midstream Policy of the American Petroleum Institute, Mr. Andrew J. Black, President and CEO of Liquid Energy Pipeline Association, Mr. Richard Ledger. How do you say it, sir? Mr. Richard, that was my second choice. Mr. Richard Leger, Senior Vice President of Natural Gas Business, CenterPoint Energy, on behalf of the American Gas Association. Thank you, sir. And then Mr. Bill Karam.
Karam, you got it.
Yeah, okay. Executive Director, Pipeline Safety Safety Trust. Thank you, sir. So I recognize Mr. Robin Roerick for your open statement. 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Chairman Young, Ranking Member Peters, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the invitation today. My name is Robin Roerick, and I'm Vice President of Midstream Policy at the American Petroleum Institute. API represents all segments of America's oil and natural gas industry, from integrated global companies to independent producers, supporting 11 million jobs across all 50 states. Pipelines make it possible to safely deliver the affordable energy our families, businesses, and economy rely on day and night. With over 3 million miles of pipelines crisscrossing America, the safe and reliable transport of oil and natural gas is essential not just to America's economy, but to our national security. Pipeline operators know safety must always come first. Our goal is clear: 0 incidents. And we're making progress. Recent data from PHMSA confirms this. Between 2020 and 2024, liquid pipeline incidents affecting people or the environment dropped 13%. Incident rates per million barrels delivered fell by 33% since 2019, even as mileage and delivery volumes increased. Similarly, natural gas transmission incidents have declined 23% since 2020. These results did not happen by chance. A regulatory foundation, coupled with the adoption and continual updating of API's industry safety standards, has played a major role in this continuous improvement across the industry. In fact, API has developed more than 800 standards, many of which are used globally to improve pipeline safety and environmental protection. But to fully leverage their benefits, PHMSA must routinely and efficiently incorporate updated standards into federal regulations. Currently, approximately half of API standards cited in PHMSA rules are outdated. Congress should direct PHMSA to commit to reviewing and updating its references to standards every 3 years. If an updated standard isn't adopted, the agency should publicly explain why, to provide clarity on its perspective, and help industry determine a path forward to ideally avoid conflict between the standard and the regulation. More broadly, we appreciate PHMSA's recent efforts towards regulatory reform, in particular, the agency's consideration of updating and modernizing repair criteria for hazardous liquid and natural gas pipelines, and allowing for the use of risk-based inspections for PHMSA-regulated breakout tanks. But Congress can help accelerate further safety improvements on multiple fronts. First, Congress should direct PHMSA to update pipeline operating statuses. Today, pipelines are categorized only as active or abandoned. We need an official status for idled pipelines clearly defined using API's recommended practice 1181. This common sense update would allow pipeline operators to safely pause certain activities when risk levels are lower, aligning regulation with real-world operational needs. We also see significant room to standardize the damage prevention processes across the country by incorporating leading industry practices, reducing exemptions, and improving enforcement. There are also opportunities to streamline the regulatory process itself, especially in PHMSA's pipeline inspection program. Currently, operators often undergo repetitive inspections by multiple federal, state, and community authorities reviewing the same procedures. These redundant efforts consume valuable time and resources which could be better directed towards safety improvements. API supports an independent evaluation of PHMSA's inspection processes to identify ways to streamline inspections, improve collaboration, and maintain a laser focus on achieving safety outcomes. Beyond these priorities, several complementary regulatory improvements would enhance pipeline safety and operations, such as reforming PHMSA's special permit process, strengthening criminal penalties for vandalism, clarifying jurisdictional overlaps for in-plant piping, and ensuring responsible right-of-way maintenance through conservation and habitat management programs. In closing, I want to stress that America leads the world in oil and natural gas production, and pipelines are central to this success. The improvements we've seen in pipeline safety are significant, but our industry remains committed to doing even more. As Congress works to reauthorize PHMSA, API urges the adoption of smart, updated references to standards in their regulations, completion of overdue rulemakings, and streamlining inspections. These steps will help America safely meet growing energy demands and demonstrate leadership to the world. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to your questions and your continued bipartisan work to advance pipeline safety and elevate American energy leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Rorick. Mr. Black, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member. I'm Andy Black, President and CEO of the Liquid Energy Pipeline Association. LEPA represents pipeline owners and operators delivering transportation fuels like gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, transportation feedstocks like crude oil, home heating fuels like propane and heating oil, industrial feedstocks like ethane and butane, and low-carbon solutions like renewable diesel, LP gas, and carbon dioxide. We have over 50 member companies delivering over 20 billion barrels annually across our nearly 230,000-mile network of pipelines. The states of every member of this subcommittee play a role in delivering by pipeline the energy Americans need and want. Pipelines deliver energy from where it's produced, especially in states like Alaska, Texas, and New Mexico, to where that energy is turned into useful products like refineries in Michigan, Texas, Indiana, Mississippi, Ohio, Illinois, and New Jersey. Different liquid pipelines then carry those refined products to local regions across America. Pipelines serving America across states like South Dakota, Nebraska, and Missouri. Even if energy products travel those last miles by truck or ship to states like West Virginia, Hawaii, or Massachusetts, that energy had to travel at least some point on a pipeline. Indiana, the subcommittee chair's home state, is a terrific example of the importance of pipelines. As a crossroads for America, Indiana is also a crossroads of pipelines. Crude oil pipelines cross Indiana to deliver to refineries in Gary, Mount Vernon, and neighboring Ohio and Michigan. Refined products pipelines deliver gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel from these refineries to major population centers across Indiana. Natural gas liquids pipelines deliver propane from as far away as Texas to homes across rural Indiana and elsewhere. Pipeline-delivered propane is also vital to the farmers of Indiana and other states drying crops after harvest and keeping barns warm in the winter. As this committee considers the role of pipeline infrastructure and what changes to make to federal pipeline safety laws, it's important to recognize that pipelines are the safest way to deliver energy. More than 99.999% of crude oil and petroleum products delivered by pipeline reaches its destination safely. A report prepared for Congress by PHMSA analyzing 10 years of incident data found that pipelines were 13 times safer than both trains and trucks, with pipelines experiencing only one incident for every 720 million gallons delivered. An Obama administration analysis found that rejecting a major pipeline and shipping the same crude oil by rail would increase the risk of oil release by over 800 times and of barrels released by 2.6 times. Current PHMSA pipeline incident statistics also show that pipeline safety is improving. According to publicly available PHMSA data, total liquid pipeline incidents are down 13% over the last 5 years, and liquid pipeline incidents impacting people or the environment are also down 13% over the last 5 years. Declining pipeline incidents over the last 5 years supports a measured approach to reauthorizing pipeline safety laws without major changes or new mandates. LIPA believes Congress can do more to help modernize pipeline safety programs. Key parts of PHMSA's safety regulations are over 20 years old and do not reflect the latest advances in safety technology or know-how. LIPA recognizes that America is blessed with an abundance of energy. Smart pipeline policies will promote pipeline energy infrastructure needed to deliver American energy dominance. LIPA believes Congress can help PHMSA increase the effectiveness and transparency of its pipeline safety programs and requirements. We welcome the committee's interest in pipeline safety reauthorization. My written testimony details the many provisions LIPA supports. I'll name 5. Number 1, reforming PHMSA's special permit program. Number 2, strengthening penalties for pipeline safety violations that impair operation of facilities or damage construction sites. Number 3, establish inspection and maintenance required for idled pipelines after Congress directed PHMSA to do so, and it did not. Number 4, reauthorize, this time without extraneous conditions, a PHMSA technology demonstration pilot program to restore the will of Congress and harness the latest high-tech inspection technologies without bureaucratic red tape. And number 5, allow risk-based inspections of in-service breakout tanks to reduce worker safety threats, avoid air pollutant emissions, minimize unnecessary greenhouse gas emissions, and prevent creation of hazardous waste, conforming PHMSA's regulations with that of EPA. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before you today on the benefits of pipelines, including their safety.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Leze, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Young, Ranking Member Peters, members of the subcommittee, I'm Richard Leger, Senior Vice President, Natural Gas Business for CenterPoint Energy, testifying on behalf of the American Natural Gas Association. AGA represents more than 200 utilities that deliver natural gas to 74 million customers. Natural gas pipelines deliver essential energy to 177 million Americans through a 2.5 million mile pipeline system, including 2.2 million miles of local distribution pipelines operated by natural gas utilities. An integral part of this nation's pipeline infrastructure, CenterPoint Energy operates 74,000 miles of distribution pipeline and is privileged to serve nearly 4 million customers in Indiana, Texas, Ohio, and Minnesota. We also manage nearly 1,100 miles of transmission lines and approximately 300 storage wells. In 2024, we delivered 571 BCF to our customers. And during the January 21st winter storm, where Minnesotans experienced 62 consecutive hours below zero, we successfully delivered at 1.5 BCF, which is the equivalent of 460 gigawatt hours of energy delivered, representing more than the electric capacity for the state of Minnesota. Gas utility distribution pipelines are the last critical link in the delivery chain that brings natural gas from the wellhead to the burner tip. Companies like CenterPoint Energy are the face of the natural gas industry. We live in the communities that we serve. We interact daily with both customers and state authorities who oversee pipeline safety locally. They are our customers, our neighbors, our friends, and our family. As such, pipeline safety is and must be our #1 priority. The primary safety tool for gas utility operators is a Distribution Integrity Management Program, or DIMP. DIMP is a regulatory process that allows an operator to develop a safety plan that addresses the unique operating characteristics of their individual gas system. From a CenterPoint perspective, each of our 4 systems have different operating environments, customer requirements, and infrastructure needs. DIMP allows us to appropriately plan and prioritize pipeline safety, resiliency, and reliability work that strengthens each of our unique individual systems. Upgrading distribution pipelines is also critical to pipeline safety. 43 states and the District of Columbia have expedited pipeline replacement programs. In the past 17 years, the amount of cast iron bare steel pipeline replacement in use has declined over 50%, replaced by newer technology pipelines, which increase system safety and reliability. CenterPoint Energy is investing hundreds of millions of dollars every year to modernize our gas systems to enhance safety and reliability. For example, we will eliminate cast iron and bare steel from our systems by the end of 2026, and we will modernize our remaining low-pressure systems by 2030. The natural gas distribution industry has proved it can simultaneously increase natural gas delivery and improve safety. But more needs to be done. CenterPoint natural gas utilities support the following concepts in upcoming pipeline safety reauthorization legislation, policy priorities that will measurably improve pipeline safety and industry operations. #1, limiting serious injuries and fatalities, property damage, and environmental impacts caused by unintended excavation damage incidents. #2, strengthening criminal penalties on those who purposely sabotage or intentionally damage pipeline operations. #3, identifying technology alternatives that, if utilized, will meet the intent of existing pipeline safety regulations and provide an equal or greater level of pipeline safety. #4, studying how natural gas hydrogen blending and distribution systems worldwide are safely operated. #5, creating a voluntary information sharing system to collect and share pipeline safety, operational best practices, and lessons learned with industry partners. And finally, #6, establishing a 4 or preferably 5-year reauthorization period so PHMSA and industry have sufficient time to complete work authorized by the previous reauthorization. CenterPoint Energy and AGA members support fact-based, reasonable, and practical updates to pipeline safety legislation that build upon lessons learned and evolving technologies. In that spirit, we look forward to our continued work with this committee, as well as your counterparts in the House of Representatives to help facilitate pipeline safety reauthorization legislation. Please use us as a technical resource whenever and wherever we can be helpful. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this hearing, and I look forward to this conversation.
Thanks so much, Mr. Leger. Mr. Karam, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Young, Ranking Member Peters, and members of the subcommittee. I'm Bill Karam, Executive Director of the Pipeline Safety Trust, which was created after the 1999 Olympic pipeline tragedy in Bellingham, Washington, that killed 3 boys. We serve as an independent national watchdog over the pipeline industry and its regulators. On average, a significant pipeline incident occurs every 32 hours in America, nearly 1 every day. Since this subcommittee's last markup in July 2019, 67 people have been killed and 182 hospitalized from pipeline incidents. That's 67 families forever changed and 182 lives altered, many permanently. The past 2 years have been the deadliest in nearly 15, with 30 deaths, including a 5-year-old in Missouri, a 15-year-old in Utah, and an 82-year-old pastor's wife in Mississippi. Our shared goal of 0 incidents feels unreachable when we haven't yet been able to prevent these tragic deaths. Making a meaningful difference on pipeline safety will require 3 essential and interconnected elements: improved regulations, effective enforcement, and widespread adoption of pipeline safety management systems, or PSMS. In many cases, Congress has hamstrung PHMSA from developing effective regulations. Provisions in the pipeline safety statute, like the extra burdensome cost-benefit requirement, make it extremely difficult for PHMSA to develop life-saving regulations. Also, the non-application clause, which permanently exempts approximately half our nation's transmission pipelines, including some at the highest risk, from meeting some modern safety standards. There certainly are operators leading the way on safety, but this is not universal. We need regulations that allow flexibility for innovation while ensuring the product stays in the pipelines of all operators. I've included practical, common sense ideas for improving regulations that would make a real difference on safety in my written testimony, such as fire shutoff valves. These simple devices automatically close when exposed to heat, preventing gas from fueling house fires. They are inexpensive, require no ongoing maintenance, and can be easily installed on service lines. As recently recommended by the NTSB, natural gas alarms or methane detectors, if installed in homes and businesses with or near gas service, would undoubtedly save lives. We need modernized regulations for carbon dioxide and hydrogen-blended pipelines. Congress has incentivized this infrastructure without addressing the regulatory and research gaps that put communities on the front lines of significant safety risks. This year marks 5 years since the Denbury carbon dioxide failure in Satarsha, Mississippi, that sent nearly 50 people to the hospital. That harrowing night laid bare many of the risks and regulatory shortfalls with these pipelines. Increasing authorized resources to PHMSA is also necessary. Not only has the agency been chronically underfunded, but the additional miles of jurisdictional pipe and the potential build-out of carbon dioxide and hydrogen pipelines demand an increase in resources from Congress, both to the agency and, just as significantly, to the state programs. Even the best regulations, however, can be meaningless without robust enforcement. When we try to chart penalties levied on operators against their quarterly earnings after tragic incidents, we often can't even visualize the penalty at such a tiny percentage of earnings, even when PHMSA is fully using its enforcement authority. Recently, PHMSA's enforcement shows a concerning trend. Enforcement case initiations have declined by as much as 90% compared to historical averages across multiple prior administrations. Meanwhile, incident rates remain relatively consistent. This enforcement gap warrants the subcommittee's attention. According to a recent PHMSA report to Congress on the adoption of pipeline safety management systems, or PSMS, among gas distribution operators, while most pipeline mileage is owned by operators committed to PSMS, only half of all operators have made this commitment. To improve safety, we need widespread industry adoption, all systems, all operators, large and small. This subcommittee has an opportunity to save lives and make a meaningful difference on pipeline safety by streamlining rule development, making enforcement more effective, and driving adoption of PSMS. As you discuss how to move forward on authorizing PHMSA's pipeline safety program and make improvements to the law, I implore you to think of the empty seats at dinner tables across the country because of pipeline failures. 30 dinner tables are missing someone from the last 2 years alone. I've been with families who've lost loved ones recently and some 25 years ago, and I can assure you the pain never goes away. Please ensure PHMSA meets its responsibility to the American people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karam. I will now recognize Senator Cruz, full committee chairman, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Americans have been abundantly clear that they want cheaper, reliable, and safe energy. That's what we're here today to discuss. What federal policies would ensure that energy America needs is affordable, reliable, and safe? The Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, is the agency within the Department of Transportation responsible for overseeing pipeline safety. This is no small task. With over 3 million miles of oil, natural gas, and other hazardous liquid pipelines all across this nation. Good federal policy would ensure that pipeline operators have a clear understanding of the safety requirements. Federal regulations are based on data and address risk appropriately, and the regulations are cost-effective. So what was the previous administration's policy on pipeline safety? One maxim of politics is that personnel is policy. If that's the case, then the Biden administration didn't give a damn about pipeline safety because they didn't nominate anyone to be the PHMSA administrator. That's right. It's not that they nominated someone who withdrew and then withdrew that person. They simply never bothered to nominate any human being to lead the pipeline safety agency. Instead, they relied on a deputy administrator for the entire 4 years, a position that is not confirmed by the United States Senate. That was a shameful dereliction of duty. Unfortunately, in that entire time, this committee never held a single hearing on pipeline safety for those entire 4 years, denying us any opportunity for oversight. So there was nobody nominated by the president in the position, nobody confirmed by the Senate in the position, and this committee held 0 hearings on pipeline safety. That gives you an indication of what priority they put on this topic. President Trump has corrected this error by nominating Paul Roberti to lead PHMSA. I hope to hold a hearing on his nomination very soon. The unaccountable Biden PHMSA also attempted to remake the Pipeline Safety Agency into a climate change agency, because every agency in the federal government under Biden was a climate change agency instead of doing what its damn purpose was. Not only duplicating the work of other agencies, but disregarding the explicit statutory language that Congress carefully negotiated. One egregious example of the Biden PHMSA's overreach is the natural gas leak detection and repair rule, in which PHMSA included the regulation of underground natural gas storage and liquefied natural gas facilities, despite the statute explicitly not including those among the list of facilities to be addressed by that rulemaking. It's notable that more actions finalized during the Biden PHMSA were overturned by a U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals than any other administration since Congress created the agency in 2004. Listen to that again. 21 years ago, Congress created that agency. The last 4 years under President Biden, they had more of their actions overturned by a federal court of appeals than any administration in history. I suppose that's not surprising, given that they didn't have anyone named to run the agency and they didn't have the Senate engaged in oversight on them. Fortunately, President Trump stopped the leak detection rule before it could be promulgated. This Congress, we have the opportunity to debate and to pass a pipeline safety reauthorization. Today's hearing is designed to help inform that discussion. One topic I expect to hear from the witnesses is the threat to pipeline safety from eco-terrorists. Though the current statute has penalties against individuals, quote, damaging or destroying an operational pipeline, it does not expressly address eco-terrorists who tamper with pipelines or damage pipelines under construction. The unauthorized turning of pipeline valves is a major safety concern that threatens the very environment that the eco-terrorists claim they're trying to protect. Pipeline operators have been forced to shut down their lines in response to threats from eco-terrorists. I'm proud to co-sponsor Senator Sheehy's Safe and Secure Transportation of Energy Act, which would close this gap in statute by adding, quote, vandalizing, tampering with, disrupting the operation or construction of, or preventing the operation or construction of a pipeline to the list of actions for which penalties could be applied. I also want to hear from the witnesses about ways that pipeline operators are seeking to improve the safe operation of their pipelines, but for which outdated or misguided regulations are currently barriers to greater safety. I look forward to the witnesses' testimony and their response to questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Senator Cruz, for that opening statement. We'll now move to member questions, and I'll begin with Mr. Leger. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I'm interested in using this PHMSA reauthorization to modernize our pipeline safety laws and to seize on opportunities that would allow industry to deploy innovative technologies to enhance safety within the broader ecosystem. Mr. Leger, can you provide an example of a promising safety technology and what legislative changes might be needed to promote further adoption of this technology or new technologies in general?
Absolutely, Senator Young. Thank you for the question. At CenterPoint Energy, we've certainly embraced new technology, as well as our other member companies that are associated with AGA. Have a couple of things that we work on. Number one of the things that I'm really most proud of that would certainly be helpful to have PHMSA weigh in on is we are currently deploying advanced metering technology. And that's a first in the industry. And we plan to install the 1 millionth meter of that this year. Over a 7-year period, we plan to replace every single one of our meters on our system with this advanced meter technology. So one of the things that this does, it is directly affects what you were talking about is the safe operation of our system. So the meter that we are working with has a couple of sensors on the inside. One is a heat sensor. And if there's a fire on the inside of the house and the building wall gets to a certain temperature, it will automatically shut that meter off. Additionally, there's a flow sensor in there that when it gains flow that's excessive of what is normal through that meter, it will automatically shut that meter off, thereby providing safety features for the homeowner.
And so those are solutions, clearly, as you've articulated, they're designed to enhance safety. And sufficient incentive already exists, it seems, for your adoption, your deployment of those technologies. Are there any changes either to regulation or to our statutes that pertain to pipeline safety that you or perhaps other members think might be appropriate to enable adoption of those technologies or similar technologies?
I would say that legislation or rulemaking at the federal level that allows new technologies to be approved and the streamlined process approved at the PHMSA level only helps us at the local level to get them approved. And I'll give you, for instance, anytime we bring on a new technology, if it's not already approved by PHMSA, then I need to go to each and every state that I operate in and then individually get them approved. So it's efficiency.
Okay. Mr. Black?
In the 2020 PIPES Act, Congress authorized a technology pilot demonstration program for pipeline operators to show to PHMSA how new technologies should be reflected in pipeline repair criteria regulations, right? Pipelines are inspected from the inside, inline inspection, so-called smart pigs traveling inside the pipeline. Right. Collecting all that information. The pilot program authorized by Congress was time limited. PHMSA ruined it. PHMSA required it to go through the special permit process in the last administration, and they were going to apply NEPA reviews to what's an R&D project. We need Congress to reauthorize that and to tell PHMSA not to do that so that we can show PHMSA how
this is
to
a
benefit.
systemic issue within the federal government. We do pilot programs all the time. We defund the pilot programs before they played out. Sometimes we allow pilot programs to occur without a study to analyze how they've done. When there is a study and we have a very successful pilot program, we never scale. I mean, who runs an organization like this? Well, it's a rhetorical question. So Mr. Rourke, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that there are many improvements that can be made to existing regulations where we take a risk-based approach that allow us to use the latest technology. Mr. Black and Mr. Leger talked about some of those technologies, not only on pipelines, there also exists a lot of technologies that we can use, drones, robotics on tanks as well. You mentioned, Senator, the use of AI. There are huge opportunities to use AI, and industry is exploring the opportunities to use AI for data management, and then also use AI to help us to look at that data and then preemptively address issues. So we just need to free up the process to let us use these technologies.
Great. Very briefly, anything to add, Mr. Karam, on this topic? It's okay if not.
Very briefly, I'll just say, obviously we support technological innovation to improve safety. We understand the importance of having a good process in place if you're going to allow operators to not follow the current minimum safety regulations. Sure. There needs to be a robust process to make sure that technology is safe.
One very pointed point of clarification or perhaps education for me, Mr. Leger. Did you say cast iron belch?
I'm sorry, cast iron and bare steel.
And bare steel.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
All right. And so we have pipes that are not in the latest. They don't have the appropriate form of steel or the most modern and resilient steel. Unpack this for me.
Yes, sir.
Someone who doesn't make steel for a living.
Absolutely. Yeah. So bare steel and cast iron are both pipes that have been in the ground for 60, 80, sometimes 100 years. And we've eliminated the vast majority of that in our system, and we'll have it out in 2026.
Why do we need to eliminate it?
Because it's not the safest and most modern technology that's available right now. And so we're putting that in with high-density plastic, and then also steel, properly coated steel.
All right. Well, we may have to follow up on that. I'm told they make some steel in the state of Indiana. Mr. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, state utility commissions and state pipeline inspectors oversee roughly 85% of the nation's pipeline infrastructure. This federal-state partnership is critical, as our state inspectors are usually intimately familiar with the local pipeline operations, and their work can lead to often more thorough and frequent inspections than PHMSA could possibly do by themselves. So to our industry panelists, Mr. Black, Mr. Leger, and Mr. Rourke, as the industry works towards zero incidents, can you speak to the important role that state agencies play in working with you to keep the pipeline system safe and operational? We'll start, Mr. Black.
Thank you, Senator. Two things come to mind on states. One, states maintain excavation damage programs where we're trying to protect underground pipelines and other utility infrastructure from damage. Those programs are weak if there are exemptions to parties that don't have to participate in the one-call program, or if those programs are inaccurately enforced. There's legislation that was introduced in a committee in the House last year that puts the right pressure on states to improve their excavation damage programs, and we call that to your attention. Second, as you mentioned, sometimes states are approved by PHMSA to inspect even interstate pipelines, and that helps free up resources. It doesn't help when there's duplication. We have operators sometimes being investigated by the feds and the states. If we can align that, we can spread those state and federal inspection resources more broadly.
But to the question, states do play a pretty important role.
Absolutely, Senator. Yes.
Mr. Leger?
Thank you.
States play an important role.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Peters. They absolutely do play an important role, and we work with our state regulators on a daily basis for pipeline safety. I do want to echo the damage prevention rules. I think that is something that is certainly that we can improve upon. And I only call to attention Chairman Young's state, Indiana, which is one of the top states in damage prevention, and you can see that by their damage prevention rates.
Thank you. Mr. Rourke?
Yeah, I would also agree, Senator. The points that Mr. Leger and Mr. Black raised on the damage prevention program, I don't think can't be emphasized enough. And I think there are opportunities to reduce some of the exemptions that occur to the damage prevention program, opportunities to improve the enforcement, and there's certainly opportunities to improve the coordination between the feds and the states for not only the inspections. States do have the authority to increase their regulations on pipelines. I think it's important, though, that the feds and the states work collaboratively to ensure that there's no conflict in those regulations and in the enforcement.
Sure. So work more collaboratively, but I think you all agree that states are an important part
Yes,
of this equation. So, Mr. Karam, I'm turning to you now because you raised this very topic in your written testimony. How would fully funding states at the allowed 80% serve to help the industry in achieving these zero incident targets that they all want to achieve?
Yes, thank you for that question. As mentioned, the majority of the nation's pipelines are under state oversight. They all need to follow minimum federal safety regulations set by PHMSA, but the inspection and enforcement in most of these pipelines is run by the state. In addition to that, nearly all of the nation's distribution pipelines, those pipelines that bring gas into people's homes and businesses, are those that are under the inspection and enforcement authority of the state programs. And these are the pipelines that are closest to people and that lead to most of the fatalities and injuries. So I cannot overstate enough the importance of a well-funded state program.
Great, thank you. A bit more than 4 years ago, on May 7th of 21, a ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline caused significant impacts on communities from Texas to New York, and highlighted certainly the importance of robust, timely cyber threat information and the sharing between private sector as well as federal agencies. I'm very concerned that the upcoming expiration of the CISA 2015 liability protections for public-private cyber threat information could enable another attack like we saw on the Colonial Pipeline. Mr. Rourke, Mr. Leger, would you agree that the expiration of information sharing and the liability protections associated with that under CISA 2015 would negatively impact pipeline cybersecurity?
Yes, certainly we would. We would like to see that piece of legislation reauthorized as well. That legislation provides some criminal protections through privacy, through confidentiality, antitrust that allow the information sharing to occur between the private and public sector. The nation, as we're all well aware, is under constant threat and attack from cyber criminals. Our industry is certainly not immune to it, and allowing the statute to get reauthorized will allow those protections to stay in place, which will enable industry to participate more robustly in that information sharing.
And we just have a few more months before it expires. Mr. Leger, you want to add anything to that?
I can't really add anything. I will say I'm not the proper witness to talk about cybersecurity. I'm an operator, but we're happy to get back with you in your office and this committee with a QFR.
Great, great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of the witnesses for being here. Mr. Rourke, Mr. Leger, and Mr. Black, can you tell me about your members' experiences with unauthorized valve turners or protesters who damage pipeline construction sites? How often does this happen, and what type of risks does this activity pose to pipeline safety?
We've had a number of dangerous and destructive situations from attacks on pipelines. In 2016, opponents in 4 northern states cut through fences, cut through locks to turn valves on pipelines that brought 15% of our consumed crude oil. In 2017, an activist in Iowa torched into pipeline components awaiting construction on the Dakota Access Pipeline. Also in 2017, a pipeline protester armed with a high-powered rifle shot at the Sable Trail natural gas pipeline. And sadly, in 22, there was a movie called How to Blow Up a Pipeline that was released nationwide, and it glorified violent action. Attacks on pipelines risk hurting the environment, the people there, and even the perpetrators themselves.
If I could add, this issue tends to be somewhat sensitive, I think, unnecessarily. So we're not talking about the changes that we are proposing. We're not talking about squashing First Amendment rights to speech. What we're talking about are things like this, and this is a recent unclassified document from the Tennessee Fusion Center identifying a May 9th incident. And just to read a couple of quick lines here. And this is an individual who went into the facility, tampered with a gas pipeline. Local businesses and approximately 430 residents were evacuated due to gas in the air. The tampering impacted gas flow pressure, resulting in safety systems being activated. Responding gas company officials resolved the issues and restored system functions. This is an example that happened just a few weeks ago where not only was there safety risk and health and potentially life-threatening issues that occurred not only to the individual, to the workers that had, fortunately the safety systems kicked in, the workers then had to go in and manage this and ameliorate the situation, but then it provided risk to all of those residents that are in the surrounding areas, not to mention the impacts to their service.
Beyond what was mentioned here, what I want to talk about is reiterate the cascading events of something like that. Not to mention what was already said about the risk to the person completing the act, but also the risk to our communities and the risk to my employees that have to respond to something like that. Beyond that, you have cascading events where you have hospitals, critical care facilities, local police departments that were without gas that can no longer protect us and take care of our citizens. And then if you have a really bad incident where you have to shut down a pipeline, now you also have the danger of critical generating facilities that are now down, and then now you don't have power for the area. So it's a cascading event that I worry about.
Well, Mr. Black mentioned the outrageous movie, How to Blow Up a Pipeline. I'm embarrassed to say my alma mater, Harvard, proudly screened that movie on campus. And people wonder why so many Americans are losing faith in our so-called elite academic institutions when they are getting so extreme as trying to train young people on how to be eco-terrorists. Mr. Karam, you testified before the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee that you agreed with the statement that people who damage pipelines or threaten to damage pipelines, such as unauthorized valve turners, should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law because of the danger they put the public in. Do you still agree with that statement?
I do. The Pipeline Safety Trust does not support the creation of unsafe conditions on any pipelines.
Thank you. Mr. Black and Mr. Rorick, PHMSA is authorized to grant special permits to pipeline operators in which PHMSA waives compliance with statute or regulation if PHMSA determines that the waiver is consistent with pipeline safety. I have heard that PHMSA, particularly under the Biden administration, would add numerous additional requirements to special permits that were unrelated to the underlying regulation the permit was designed to address. Can the two of you speak to this issue with special permits, particularly what extraneous requirements were added and what you propose to fix the special permit process?
Congress created special permits for a good reason, right? There's so many different operating conditions of a pipeline. The types of operating conditions, the types of pipe, is it a liquid, is it moving crude oil, is it products, is it hot, is it cold? And so this has been a way for pipeline operators to go to PHMSA and say, I've got an equivalent way to do this that's different and that's better. But PHMSA has ruined the special permit program. Other than special permits for class locations, there have been very few because PHMSA was applying unrelated conditions and PHMSA was taking forever. I've got a sad example of how PHMSA applied something that was just so loaded down with unrelated conditions that it was unusable. Somebody had an application to deal with a dent a certain way, and the regulations required something that they knew from their engineering assessment wasn't appropriate. A simple permit request turned into 56 pages, including 54 unrelated conditions that weren't even for the right type of pipeline. This was a liquids pipeline, and they applied natural gas conditions. Congress can fix this. Congress can tell PHMSA to not require extraneous conditions, unrelated conditions to the issue being addressed in a special permit, and to act in a timely basis.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Karam, New Mexico, as you know, is home to the Permian Basin and the nation's second largest oil producer. In 2023, there was a study conducted of a comprehensive aerial measurement of oil and gas producing basins across the United States, including the Permian Basin. Those surveys found that the Permian Basin oil and gas operation had the highest total emissions observed anywhere in the United States. So even though New Mexico is not the largest producer, they were creating the largest methane plumes. Mr. Karam, yes or no, is leaking methane from pipeline a public safety hazard?
It is, yes. We continue to have home explosions and pipeline failures from known leaks that have not been repaired.
Yes or no, does leaking methane from pipelines cause environmental harm?
Yes, yes, it does.
Yes or no, is leaking methane from pipelines a waste of a natural resource into the air?
Yes.
So arguably, it's also a taking of resources when there's state land involved and there's leaking taking place. It's like taking taxpayer money, right?
Yes.
Yes or no, is advanced technology available to detect leaks in pipelines so operators can fix them?
Yes, methane detection has come a long way in development.
Mr. Chairman, how old are the existing rules and requirements for operators to conduct leak surveys of pipelines?
That particular part of the code is very old, hasn't been updated in decades.
And in one word, how would you characterize the requirements on operators to survey for leaks in their pipelines and repair them?
Vague.
In the decades since those vague requirements were enacted, we've seen preventable hazards and explosions that have taken lives and endangered people. Is that correct?
Sadly, yes.
In the decades since those vague requirements were enacted, have we seen technology to detect leaks advance?
Yes, that's come a long way.
Now, the last time the pipeline safety bill was reauthorized was in 2020, correct?
Correct?
That bill was signed by President Trump, correct?
Correct?
And that bill included a provision requiring the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration to write rules and regulations regulations on leak detection and repair. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your organization was supportive of these measures, correct?
Yes, we were and are.
And those rules have been updated, is that correct?
No, we went through a very long process. There was 2 weeks of advisory committee meetings, notice of proposed rulemaking. The rule was submitted to the Federal Register, but at the very end of the last administration, and it has since been withdrawn.
Now, this has been brought up in this hearing today. I think I read article after article that suggested the administration withdrew that rule because they were worried that under a new Republican Congress, that there would be a CRA that would pull that rule out. And once that is done, can't touch it ever again. I think that's important for the record for us to talk about these things. It was bipartisan. The chair of this committee was instrumental in important provisions, and he's going to be instrumental in getting it again of the subcommittee. And I look forward to working with him on this as well. It's critically important, and that's why I appreciate this hearing so much. Mr. Leger, your company, CenterPoint Energy, recently deployed an advanced leak detection technology, state-of-the-art vehicle-mounted technology. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how prepared, after a long, transparent stakeholder engagement process, is the industry to adopt the optimized leak detection and repair practices as issued by the agency in January?
Well, one thing I want to say, it wasn't recently. We've actually been deployed that system 10 years ago.
Yes, sir.
So, but I would say that we have valuable data that we are willing and able to share with our partners on that adoption of that technology.
And that might encourage others to do the same. So I appreciate that good example that you have there, sir. One of the questions that I also have in this area is how we work together. I'm always reminded of how important our word is when we're working on legislation, when we're working on rules, things of that nature. With your responsibility that you're here with today, can I get your commitment to work with me and with this committee to ensure that the industry does not backslide on commitments and agreements to update these rules?
Senator, myself, my partner companies across the United States, as well as AGA, are always willing to work with you guys. I will say that collaboration among the utilities is one of the beauties of our industry.
I appreciate that very much. Now, since I have a little time left, one question that I have goes back to 2021. Are you all aware that there was a frozen pipes out in Texas in 2021 with gas, Mr. Rourke? Yes. Mr.
Yes.
Black? Yes or no? Mr. Leger?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Karam? Is there anything that should be done with weatherization? Because it impacted New Mexico as well. Now, it just didn't get as cold in New Mexico as it did in Texas with that liquid that was still in there. Is there something we could do around weatherization? Mr. Leger? I think you know the CenterPoint had a pipe freeze.
Yes, absolutely. I will say that our distribution pipe system was not frozen up. We could have delivered the gas, and we did deliver the gas during that time frame. And I would say that as my opening comments when I mentioned in Minnesota, it gets very cold, right?
Yeah.
60 hours below zero, and we were successfully delivered 1.5 BCF. So yes, we can help.
And just, Mr. Chairman, I think this is one area that we might be able to find some commonality as well, understanding that some states, like ERCOT or others, depending how those pipelines are done, but look forward to working with you there.
And I'll ask our Indiana steelmakers whether there might be certain qualities of newer steel grades that could insulate the various products that go through pipes from the elements. Yes, I've become an alchemist up here. Okay. So Senator Moreno, you're recognized for questions.
Perfect, thank you. And before you leave, Mr. Lujan, I will invite you to Ohio if you want to know what cold is. Yeah, there you go. And then I'll invite the chairman to Ohio if he wants to learn about steel making. I'm just kidding.
Top steel producer in the country. Go ahead, please, proceed.
I shouldn't be so bold given what Pacers did to the Cavs.
Nebraska has a steel plant too.
There you go. So I think maybe bring the conversation up from, no pun intended, from the underground level to maybe a little bit broader level. And if I could have each of you just quickly respond to the following question. What do you see coming in the next decade in terms of energy demand in America? We'll start with from the left to right, our left to right.
Okay. We see incredible growth in energy throughout the country. If you look at data centers, return to manufacturing, AI, these are all adding incredible amounts of demand. This kind of, if you build it, they will come. That's happened on the manufacturing and the data side, and now we need to meet that with growing infrastructure developments as well to provide that energy, sir.
We expect growth and need pipeline operators to grow to meet it.
Yes, I mean, data centers, and I'm fortunate to serve some great areas in Indiana and Texas and Ohio and Minnesota. In particular in Texas, there's a ton of growth, and we are in the process of building planning to build a pipeline around the city of Houston to better serve. But that being said, you've also got an energy transition going on that will rely on the natural gas industry to be able to serve industry as the country continues to grow and onshore more manufacturing.
This is outside of the mission of the Pipeline Safety Trust, but I'll say that we need to see improvements to the laws and regulations before the build out of more energy infrastructure to keep communities safe.
Okay. And I'll go back to Mr. Black because I think it's important for you to repeat what you said in your opening statement. If you have to deliver energy, right, energy doesn't just show up, right? You have to get it to someplace. I used to live in New England for 12 years, and I find it interesting that a lot of my colleagues from that neck of the woods talk about the importance of climate change and safety and delivery when a lot of energy is still delivered by truck. You have people showing up at your door with energy that is delivered on a diesel vehicle with all kinds of perilous issues. Like, so if you had to deliver energy, what's the safest way, safety, forget cost, just the safest way to deliver energy?
By pipeline, and government reports confirm that.
So then it seems counterintuitive that if you cared about safety, you would cripple pipelines, correct?
Correct.
And then let's take it now to the point of cost, because for a lot of working Americans, that's the number one issue. So for a lot of us, we can say, well, safety matters. And of course, nobody doesn't want safety. That's obviously nonsense. Nobody would want these disasters to happen. But what is the cost difference of getting this wrong? Mr. Black, I'll ask you.
Liquid pipelines are not just the safest way to move the fuels that we use, they're also the least costly. So liquid fuels will move on other modes that cost more and have poor safety records, and those costs will ultimately be passed on to consumers, and the poorest of us pay the most for energy. And as a proud Ohioan, we, with West Virginia and Pennsylvania, have the largest reserves of natural gas in America. And yet, our producers have been absolutely hammered with their inability to get affordable, abundant, cost-effective natural gas to New England specifically. And they rely on Canada for the vast majority of their energy demands. And the reason for that is simple. They refuse to allow pipelines to be built to get and service those consumers. Explain to me how that works. Explain to me how the logic of saying we'd rather get energy from Canada through diesel trucks and through rail, and by the way, through ships across the Great Lakes, how does that make any sense? Our country's blessed with energy abundance, but we need pipelines to get it from where it's produced to where it's used. And I don't represent natural gas pipelines, Mr. Rorick does, but it's just a few hundred miles where we've got surpluses of natural gas to where they are needed in New England.
And my final question is this, and whomever wants to answer it can answer it. We had Senator Peters talk about Line 5, something that I care a lot about. I think the chairman cares a lot about. What would be the impact? Right now, there's something that's not very well reported. You have the governor of one state wanting to shut down that pipeline. What would be the impact of shutting down that pipeline?
Lots of Midwest Americans use Canadian crude for the gasoline in their car. Lots of propane users and farmers in Michigan depend on Line 5. So the impact of Line 5 being shut down would be dramatic to the Midwest economy, but there's an answer. There's a tunnel that's being proposed. Sadly, it's been under review for 5 years. If that tunnel can be developed, we will have an even safer way to move the fuel that Ohio and Michiganders and others need.
And just, I know I'm out of time, but just a quick follow-up. Who's holding up the building of that tunnel?
State of Michigan.
So the same governor who's trying to shut down the pipeline is refusing to approve the tunnel that would fix said pipeline. It seems to me the agenda isn't about safety. It's not about affordability. It's about an attack on fossil fuels. And with that, I'll yield my time back.
Senator Markey.
Yeah, so thank you. So let me just explain what the natural gas industry is doing to New England. The natural gas industry was asked by Donald Trump to pony up tens of millions of dollars last year for his campaign. And if they did it in the natural gas industry, he would destroy the offshore wind industry. He would destroy the clean energy revolution. And by the way, he's doing it. He's asking House Republicans on the Energy and Commerce Committee and the Ways and Means Committee to destroy the clean energy industry. They're doing it. They did it yesterday. Did it the day before? Just destroy it. It's not all of the above. Here's why. The natural gas industry is used to generate electricity. We were, until Trump showed up, going to have 30,000 megawatts of offshore wind. And Trump is saying, no, it's all dead. And who's the beneficiary? The natural gas industry. Oh, we need to build more pipelines in. See the need in New England. And we're saying to the natural gas industry, we don't need you anymore, okay? We have offshore wind. So the natural gas industry has paid to have Trump, through his Department of Interior and Department of Energy, kill the offshore wind industry. Now we have one more final plant, the Vineyard Wind. That's 800 megawatts. That's equal to a nuclear power plant ready to go. But he wants to kill the battery storage industry, wants to kill all of it. It's not all of the above, okay? And the natural gas industry just can't accept the fact that we have figured out how to do it. And by the way, Trump is also imposing tariffs on and having a trade war with Canada. Quebec Hydro and northern Maine, northern New England, that's how we do it. We have partnerships with them, all right? So Trump's killing us, and then natural gas industry says, well, come in, we'll solve the problem for you. You know, we don't need anything from Canada. We don't need any electricity from offshore wind, even though that's what we want. That's what the states want. That's what the states are investing in. That's what they're trying to permit for. Natural gas is asking for Trump to come in to kill it. Say, we don't need any more natural gas, okay? We already have our indigenous resources. Quebec Hydro, offshore wind, solar. Massachusetts is number 2 per capita in installation of solar. We'll figure it out. We just need some cooperation, okay? So just understand, the natural gas industry with crocodile tears appears here, you know, as though they really care about New England and they want to make sure they can deal with our energy issues. We already figured it out. They're trying to kill our plan so that they can substitute their plan, which is more fossil fuels, more greenhouse gases. And by the way, hurricane season starts in 2 more weeks, okay? And they're gutting FEMA. So that's a recipe for disaster as well. So I'll ask one quick question. Pipelines pose a significant risk to public safety and the environment, an issue that is personal here in Massachusetts. A constituent of mine, an 18-year-old Lionel Rondon, died in the Merrimack Valley gas explosions in 2018 as a result of negligence and missing pipeline safety rules. As we transition to clean energy, we have to limit the significant risks that pipelines pose to public safety and the environment. And this is why last year I introduced my Pipeline Accountability, Safety, and Environmental Standards Act to enhance public safety, environmental integrity, transparency of pipeline operations across the United States. And I will reintroduce it again very soon. Here's what the bill does. Mandates updated safety standards to apply to existing pipelines. Require technology that isolates pipelines during catastrophic failures so it doesn't spread. Mandate disclosures of pipeline safety data to the public, and to do so much more to improve pipeline safety and accountability. Mr. Karam, do you agree that these provisions in my bill are necessary in order to serve as a preventative against a reoccurrence of what happened in Lawrence just a few years ago?
I do, yeah. The Pipeline Safety Trust does believe that. And thank you for your leadership, Senator Markey, in the aftermath of Merrimack Valley and continuing in pipeline safety.
Yeah, and a lot of the law that we passed, the regulations that are put in place are basically educated by what happened in Lawrence. Huh? To a certain extent, it was the trigger for all the reforms that we have in place. Could you expand on that, Mr. Karam?
Yeah, often, it's said often that the regulations we have are written in blood, and often after awful tragedies like what we saw in Merrimack Valley, there's lessons learned and regulations updated. A lot of my written testimony is trying to stay ahead of those kinds of tragedies and preventing them from happening in the first place. But the way the system is set up and the way it's functioned is that often we wait until the awful happens and then the regulations are updated.
Yeah, and the job of this committee is to look ahead and lead the way, to not wait for the catastrophe to inform us, but to take the evidence from experts and then to put the safeguards in.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Senator Fisher, you are recognized for questions.
Thank you, Chairman Young, for conducting this hearing today. As the former chairman of this subcommittee, I had the opportunity to lead the authorization of PHMSA in both 2015 and 2020. In each case, this subcommittee and this full committee worked diligently to reach a bipartisan product that passed the Senate unanimously. But unfortunately, following the passage of the PIPES Act in 2020, the Biden administration undercut those bipartisan efforts through a heavy-handed regulatory approach, acting outside the bipartisan congressional intent. Mr. Rourke and Mr. Black, could you speak to the effects of this approach and steps this committee can take to rectify those impacts?
Absolutely, Senator Fisher. Thank you for the question. And we touched on this a little bit earlier. The administration, previous administration, really expanded the remit, expanded PHMSA's remit beyond their congressional mandate into environmental issues like climate change. We talked about the leak detection and repair rule. It's a great example where PHMSA under the Biden administration expanded beyond the focus of this committee and PHMSA's role to address safety and look at issues like the social cost of carbon to then expand the purview of that particular rule, and thus diluting not only the effectiveness of the rule, but then diluting the focus and the resources on issues beyond safety.
Thank you. Mr. Black.
I've been doing this a while. I remember your leadership on both of those bills. Thank you. Two things come to mind about the 2020 PIPES Act. First is pipelines. PHMSA was authorized to do pipeline safety technology demonstration
And under the
programs.
Biden administration, they did not address
And they
the
ruined it,
requirement
right?
from the law.
Absolutely. And you've got the opportunity, sadly and please, to reauthorize that and this time tell them not to do the things that they did wrong. Second, you had a provision called operating status, which called upon PHMSA to have regulations unique to pipelines that are idled for market conditions, but will one day come onto the market. Come back onto the market. It's wasteful to everybody, to PHMSA and to pipeline operators, to be applying rules that don't fit there. PHMSA never acted on that, even though Congress told them to do it and gave them a deadline. So it would help if you would tell them again to do it. And we're encouraged that they might. But it's important, like you say, for PHMSA to do what Congress says.
Thank you. Mr. Rourke, PHMSA, during the Biden administration, they also acted outside that primary mission, as you said. So many of the requirements that they set and enacted under authorities which were not in the law that was passed They duplicated existing authorities that, for example, EPA has or DOE has. As we move forward as a committee, we want to make sure that those safety standards are met, that pipelines remain the safe way to transport these fuels. Do you have any suggestions on what we can do with it?
Yes, ma'am. There's certainly some great opportunities, as we've discussed, to improve and move forward with those unfinished mandates that you all have laid out that PHMSA has yet to fulfill. There are other great opportunities. As you're well aware, API is a standard-setting organization. We have a number of standards that PHMSA directly references in their regulations. In many instances, they've referenced standards that are 2 or 3 editions old. That creates conflict within our industry in these standards which move faster than the regulations. We're able to use, as Mr. Young talked about earlier, the latest technologies, the latest engineering practices. It would be very helpful if PHMSA, and we talked about it in our written testimony, were to be able to move forward with the program to periodically review those regulations and ensure that they're referencing the latest standards. And if they're not, then we need to have that dialogue to ensure that what industry is talking about doing and what we are using doesn't conflict with the regulations, as another great example.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Cantwell.
Thank
you're
you, Mr.
recognized for
Chairman.
questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate this hearing very much. In 1999, the Olympic pipeline exploded, killing 3 people in Bellingham, Washington. In response to this tragedy, the Pipeline Safety Trust was created to hold pipeline companies and the government accountable in improving pipeline safety. So very much appreciate, Mr. Karam, you being here today. A few years later, in 2004, following the increased calls for better oversight, Congress established the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, PHMSA, a new agency dedicated to pipeline safety. So, however, as we sit here today, 26 years later, it's clear that we still need to do more because these incidents can have unbelievable impacts. Over the last 20 years, pipeline incidents have caused 257 deaths and more than 1,000 injuries and over $11 billion in damages. Excuse me if this has been brought up in the hearing thus far. I don't know if it has, but this is really important data. And that's an average of 12 fatalities and 51 injuries and $550 million of property damage per year. So we need to do better. Just last month in Lexington, Missouri, a 5-year-old boy died when a contractor hit a pipeline that had not been properly marked by a pipeline company, causing a leak and an explosion. And since 2019, the last time the committee considered pipeline safety, a number of significant issues have emerged, and I know from your testimony that those have been discussed today. But I wanted to ask you, Mr. Karam, since just this year, we know those averages I just mentioned, but during the Trump administration, in the first 3 months, I feel like we have less than 2 enforcement cases. Are you concerned about this?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We are concerned about the drop-off of enforcement. We haven't seen it in previous administrations. Enforcement cases initiated have generally been consistent throughout administrations, regardless of party. So we are concerned to see this drastic, sudden drop-off.
Well, I am sending a letter to Mr. Kochman today asking him about this and asking him about the recent data and just, I want to do everything we can to prevent. And if there's something that has happened that is actually preventing this, or we're just not seeing the enforcement. So we need to understand what's happening. So I will be sending him a letter today asking about enforcement actions. I also wanted to ask you, my state is very prone to landslides and certainly potential, as we call it, the big one, earthquake. According to the USGS, 44% of the country is at risk, though, of experiencing landslides and people who live in these earthquake-prone zones. So they have, I think, a voluntary standard at PHMSA, but what should we be doing to think about this? And I don't know whether that Missouri case had anything to do with land moving or not, but.
The Missouri case did not, but many recent pipeline incidents have been caused by these factors called geohazards. I think we've learned a lot more about pipeline failures, and we are able to attribute more and more to geohazards. It is not specifically called out in the regulations, Operators on high consequence areas are required to identify all potential risks and mitigate against those, and that ostensibly would include geohazards. But we would like to see specific geohazard regulations called out by name and spelled out prescriptively and performance-based throughout the regulations. PHMSA has issued a voluntary advisory bulletin. The industry has developed a relatively strong standard around geohazard mitigation, and it's time to incorporate geohazard regulations.
Well, we probably didn't quite imagine either until we had Osa, Washington, how devastating a landslide could be and killed 40 people when literally the side of a mountain exploded. And so I do think with change in conditions, we definitely need to think about this. What about material issues? This candy factory in Reading, Pennsylvania, killing 7 people and injuring 10 others. The NTSB found the cause was a pipe made out of aldol A, which I guess is subject to failure. What do we need to do to make sure that that kind of material doesn't exist in pipes?
Yes, aldol A plastic has been known to be an issue, a material prone to failure for decades. Again, a voluntary advisory PHMSA bulletin has been out for quite some time. In addition to that awful West Reading failure, there was a failure in South Jordan, Utah that killed a 15-year-old boy. We don't know the exact cause, but we do know that aldol A was also part of that failure. I think we know enough and we've seen enough failures that it's time to have operators find all of this aldol A and take it out of their system.
Thank you. Thank you. All of these statistics, Mr. Chairman, are just striking to me that we still have this much, 12 fatalities, 51 injuries, and $550 million in property damage every year. It's too many. So I look forward to working with you and the chairman on these issues. Thank you.
Well, likewise, thanks so much, Senator Cantwell, for your leadership on this and so many other important issues. Senator Peters earlier brought up the issue of cybersecurity, and I'm glad he did. PHMSA is a pipeline safety regulator. TSA is, however, the primary regulator of pipeline security, including cybersecurity. While both agencies have distinct roles, I want to know from our witnesses, any that wish to speak on this topic, do you think there could be better coordination between TSA and PHMSA, or perhaps other agencies?
So I can speak to that, Senator, and you bring up a great point. We've seen over the last few years that TSA has really increased their oversight on cybersecurity issues. They've worked extremely well with the industry to not only address threats or address incidents when they occur, but really proactively address the threats as well. There's always opportunities for better improvement on coordination and collaboration between the agencies and, frankly, between the private and the public sector. And so we would look forward to working with both of those agencies to do that.
I expect all of you will agree that there's opportunities for better coordination. There is in every organization. So, but any specific recommendations folks can think of that? Okay, great. What role should the federal government have in pipeline security, and what are operators doing right now on this issue, if anything?
Pipeline security and cybersecurity are both very important. TSA is on the case. Pipeline operators are looking at TSA guidelines or having visits from TSA inspectors, and we know that it's an important part of maintaining the operations of pipelines.
We have active physical security and cybersecurity programs in place that are actively protecting our facilities.
Okay. I'll continue to educate myself on this issue. I know that other members will be emphasizing the importance of this. I mean, pipelines, after all, they're critical security to our economic security, to our national security, and so the federal government has an inherently important role here. Yes, Mr. Black. Yes.
I thought of one way that Congress can help on security, right? Senator Cruz talked about loopholes that are not deterring those who might damage a pipeline, right? The pipeline safety laws against damaging pipelines do not cover when a pipeline is in pre-operational status and does not cover attacks that don't damage at the time. We know that if something was damaged before it was constructed and it came into operation, there could be an incident hurting people, the environment, and the perpetrators if they're still there. We also know that there can be valve turning that doesn't cause damage then, but that can weaken the pipeline and later contribute to a rupture. Senator Cruz talked about a she-he bill that he co-sponsored, encouraged the committee to look at this. That's a way that the Senate can help secure pipelines from attacks.
Absolutely. Well, I'll consult with both Senators Cruz and Sheehy on that. Sounds like an area of vulnerability that we may need to button up. The last thing I'd like to discuss with you is outdated rulemakings. The Pipes Act of 2020, which Senator Fisher showed great leadership on, that reauthorization required PHMSA to hold a Gas Pipeline Advisory Committee, or GPAC, meeting on the class location rule. While GPAC has met to address class location, PHMSA has yet to complete this rulemaking, probably unsurprising since PHMSA did not have a Senate-confirmed leader over recent years. If it was finalized, pipeline companies could employ modern inspection technologies to prove the safety of existing infrastructure when population changes occur nearby, instead of outdated, expensive, and environmentally unhelpful methods. Mr. Roerick, do you think that this rulemaking would improve safety and avoid disruptions to communities by employing modernized practices?
Absolutely, Senator, and thank you for bringing up that critical issue. Since the original requirements were developed, they were very prescriptive in their approach, and as we've talked a lot about technology and as you focused a lot about technology, it has advanced rapidly. The rules, the way they're written, require, when certain criteria are met, for those pipes to automatically be pulled out of service and replaced. In many instances, those pipes don't need to be pulled out of service, and the latest technologies that we have can assess those pipelines in a way that's less invasive, and we can make those determinations that many of those pipelines don't have to be pulled out. Unnecessarily pulling out pipeline increases risk for the workers. It creates disruption in service. There's a study was recently completed that shows that the amount of pipe that's replaced and the gas that has to get blown down from those services, in other words, we have to clear that gas so that we can replace that pipe. There's enough gas that's released on an annual basis to provide energy for 10,000 homes. That's unnecessary risk, unnecessary interruptions to energy deliverability that we can avoid, and unnecessary costs for the industry where we can redirect those attentions to other safety issues that really demand our attention.
Chair Young, may I just quickly add something? Thank you. I just want to provide a little context there and just remind everyone what we're talking about. We have different standards on pipelines based on how the population density around that pipeline. And in a very rural area, it's generally thinner walled pipe, and the more populated the area, the stronger the pipe needs to be. So when we're talking about class location change, we're talking about when a neighborhood or population has built up around this pipeline that has the thickness set for a very rural area. So while we don't oppose some reforms to class location and the class location rule process, we just want to caution this is a very sensitive issue and could be, we have some serious safety issues. And so we appreciate care and concern on that.
Thank you, Mr. Karam. We'll keep that thought in mind as well. Thank you so much. Well, listen, were there things before we close here today? Were there any particular points that our witnesses who've offered very intelligent testimony today wished to make throughout the course of this hearing, but didn't have the opportunity? I'll give you an opportunity, 30 seconds each, if any like. Mr. Rourke?
Yeah, we have a list of items that the committee, that we would welcome the committee to consider. We've got them written down in a pamphlet here. We'll be happy to share those with you, but there are a number of issues that we'd be happy to discuss with you further.
We'll give everyone that opportunity until the end of the day on Thursday, June 5th, to respond to our questions and to make additional submissions that can go into the record. But Mr. Black, anything right now?
We encourage you to reauthorize pipeline safety demonstration pilot projects, to fix the special permit process, to deter attacks and improve criminal penalties, and reauthorize the pipeline safety laws. This committee has an important role in assuring the public that the laws and regulations are good. Thank you for acting on it.
No?
I concur with everything that my panelists have said, but I would add the creating voluntary information sharing system. Yeah. We did not talk about that, and I believe that is a best practice. It's something that we do as a utility, and I think when you, for us, like it was mentioned earlier about SMS, we're reaching out outside of the utility industry to talk about airlines on SMS, just different perspectives, different things that you can learn to only make us all better.
Glad you brought that up. Mr. Karam?
Thank you, Chair Young. I just want to refocus a bit. There was a lot of time spent talking about these unsafe terror attacks, which of course we don't support those creation of unsafe conditions on pipelines. But all the fatalities we've talked about today, the vast majority, if not all, of the 3,000 reportable incidents that have happened over the last 5 or 6 years, those are not attributable to this. And so I just want to refocus on the conditions that are causing these fatalities and failures. And the last thing I'll say, I think, is a big low-hanging fruit following an NTSB recommendation would be the required adoption of in-home methane detectors will undoubtedly save lives and make a big difference.
Thank you. Thanks again to all our witnesses for their testimony here today. Senators will have until the close of business on Thursday, May 22nd, to submit questions for the record. The witnesses again have until the end of the day, Thursday, June 5th, to respond to those questions. This concludes today's hearing. The committee stands adjourned.